Welcome back to another FPL video. This will be the team selection for Game Week 15. There is such a quick turnaround. I'll be recapping on how I did in Game Week 14 and then moving on to my transfer plans for Game Week 15 and also looking a little bit ahead and discussing how different transfers this week could impact my long-term planning. If you haven't been enjoying this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Our aim is to get this to over 200 likes, and if that's the case, then there'll be a deadline stream tomorrow on the Tuesday, as well as more content for the next game week, Game Week 16 in FPL, and also match day 6 of UCL Fantasy. But without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. I say this every single week, and with my initial plans and my team selections, I'm talking about buying Raya and all these good goalkeepers, and I still have Areola. Thankfully, there weren't many returns for goalkeepers or clean sheets in general this week, so it wasn't too bad, but Areola has been a thorn in my side all season, only one clean sheet, and he wasn't even my starting 11 when that was the case. So I think this Areola and Turner combination is very dangerous. Some West Ham fans are speculating that Fabianski could get back into the side at some stage, even if Areola isn't at fault for these goals. And whilst I wouldn't go that far, I just don't really see where the clean sheets are going to come from, period. I thought one against Palace was possible, but in the end, that's another 2-pointer. He can get the odd 3-pointer with the saves, but it's just not good enough. And I think David Raya and also Dubravka now are the two best goalkeepers in FPL. The defence was quite average this week, but Lascelles was the highlight with a 6-pointer, a differential against Manchester United. He got that clean sheet, and Newcastle are very solid at home, only conceding 4 goals at St James's Park, and they have the best home record, although they have played more games at home compared to other clubs like Man City. But Newcastle away from home, this is the issue. They are 15th in the league table away from home, and their defensive record isn't nearly as good as it is at home, and I think that does play a part. But in home matches, I would definitely advocate a double or triple up in that Newcastle defence. Kieran Trippier, Lascelles, Dubravka, you name it, any Newcastle defender who starts is a good FPL option. Now next up is going to be Tsimikas, who got an assist at the very end to win it for Liverpool. Trent Alexander-Arnold being the hero, forcing that own goal by Leno and then scoring himself at the very end. And Tsimikas has that assist potential. We all know about this. He's very good in home matches, but I actually wouldn't be surprised if he was benched against Sheffield United in Game Week 15. And if that's the case, that could be an issue. But I do have decent defensive depth this week. But afterwards, with the fixtures turning for the likes of Crystal Palace, things could actually get ugly in that defensive line, and I might need to make more changes. But for Game Week 15, things look decent, even if Tsimikas is benched. And my last defender was Saliba, who got a very harsh booking, but he got it nonetheless. And that's a 1-pointer. That's his first booking, by the way, in 411 days when he picked it up against Wolverhampton Wanderers on Saturday. But he's one of the best FPL defenders, in my opinion, especially up until the new year and even until the end of the season. If he can stay fit, I think he's integral to Arsenal keeping the most clean sheets and also having the least expected goals conceded. My midfield was solid this week, not great, but Mbeumo picked up an assist late on. My main gripe is that I sold Diaby to Mbeumo, only gained 1 point from that, and I also went against selling Bowen and I sold Diaby instead. That's a 2-point difference, which isn't too bad when you put it that way, but by keeping Jarrod Bowen, that also meant I sold Ollie Watkins this week. Whenever I've sold Ollie Watkins, it has been an absolute disaster. 9 points against Chelsea when I sold him, then 23 against Brighton, and now an 11-pointer against Bournemouth. And it is what it is. When you sell Watkins, you always take that risk. I might buy him back, as I'll discuss in the transfer section. And I also put out a poll on my channel talking about some different transfers I could make, and you have let your feelings be known in that poll. But the rest of the midfield looked better, with Salah picking up an assist, but it really should have been much more. He was robbed of 2 assists by Darwin Nunez. He missed an open goal himself. So really, Salah on another day could have been on 13 points at the very least. It could have been 16 plus quite easily, but it is what it is. And next up is Anthony Gordon, who picked up an injury in that 1-0 win against Manchester United. He scored the winner and another double-digit return there in back-to-back home games. He has returned in every single match at St James's Park so far this season, but he is a doubt now to play against his former club Everton in Game Week 15. My final midfielder was Bukayo Saka, who ended a run of no goals since Game Week 7 in the Premier League, and he scored quite early on. Arsenal were absolutely dominating. They They really should have won the game by 3-4, even possibly 5-0, but they gifted a goal to Wolves, and it was mainly Zinchenko there who did so. And then you have Arsenal just missing some gilt-edged chances, Trossard with a brace of missed chances, Nketiah missing another one, and there were plenty more, Martinelli hitting the post. So on another day, it could have been some massive wins for the likes of Arsenal, and also potentially a bigger return for Saka. But it was Odegaard who caught my eye in that match. But for me, the best Arsenal asset by far is still Bukayo Saka. Why do I do this to myself is when I'm constantly asking after selling Ollie Watkins to Darwin Núñez. I did a sort of similar transfer last season, but it had different circumstances around it. I sold Callum Wilson, who was an injury doubt. I think it was against Chelsea back at that stage. I sold him for Darwin Núñez, who played Southampton at home, and Darwin got 13 points in that match, and I gained 12 points from that transfer. It was just before the World Cup, and that's the only time I've had Darwin Núñez until now, and he missed 2 huge chances, one of them hitting the crossbar, and both of them would have been Salah assists. So Darwin Núñez is the source of my frustration this week. Selling him to Ollie Watkins has cost me 9 points, and then also on top of that, there was selling Diaby instead of Bowen, which might be a good thing long term, but it hasn't paid off just yet. My final player was Erling Haaland, who got a booking at the very end for complaining about a nonsensical decision. It happened with me with a player called Patrick from Lazio in UCL Fantasy. It's happening all around. Referees are terrible, we all know this, but Erling Haaland still got a brace of assists, but he should have scored at least 1 goal. I'm saying 1 at the very least. He should have scored 2, and he had some big chances. Man City should have been out of sight. They were absolutely dominating in the first half, but credit to Spurs, they showed some good mentality and belief, missing a lot of key players. They dug in there and got the result, but Man City will be kicking themselves. That's 3 draws in a row, and that's something you rarely see, especially back-to-back home draws. Even if it's Liverpool and Tottenham, that's still 2 points dropped on both occasions, and Man City should have won both games. And then you've got the Chelsea one, conceding 4 goals to Chelsea. Things aren't quite right at the moment with Man City, but they will click, of course, and there is no Rodri now at Aston Villa. I think that will have a huge impact. You'd still back Man City to win, but I think Aston Villa could shock some people, score plenty of goals, and who knows, maybe hold Man City to another draw. In terms of the captaincy, I went for Salah, and it's not a huge difference between him, Haaland and Saka in the end. Only 2 points between Salah and Haaland, who were the only considerations for me in Game Week 14. But this all adds up, of course, at the end of the season. So I want to captain my highest scoring players, and maybe I have to approach things differently. Go for a Gordon at home from time to time. Go for Saka and also some other players in my team. But overall, Salah and Haaland will be my main captaincy options from now until whenever I sell them. Most likely it will be until the end of the season. And also in terms of my overall points, 57, and my safety score was 63. So by keeping Ollie Watkins, I would have had a green arrow, possibly around 400,000, 300,000 even. So it's down to fine margins. I made a mistake. I might buy Watkins back already in Game Week 15, but I think the most sensible thing to do for those that made the same switch that I did is to maybe delay this move to Game Week 16 or 17, especially that Brentford away fixture, and in time for that blank Game Week 18 game against Sheffield United there for Ollie Watkins. But overall, my rank did go down by 100,000 places to 732,000. Oddly enough, that Haaland booking at the very end actually gained me a little bit of rank, but it's still a poor week overall because of that decision to sell Ollie Watkins to Darwin Núñez. Will this finally be the time where in a team selection video I discuss buying a goalkeeper and I can actually go through with it because I don't have other fires to put out, like Jarrod Bowen being injured or Ollie Watkins being a doubt and all of this jazz? Well, maybe now I can just focus on buying either David Raya or Dubravka. That is my key decision to make. Let me know which goalkeeper you prefer down in the comment section below, but I'm currently leaning towards Dubravka. Now, there are some different news coming out basically about the likes of Dubravka, and also in terms of goalkeepers Newcastle could go for. So Pope is reportedly going to be out for 4 to 5 months, and Newcastle already looking at David De Gea and Aaron Ramsdale. And remember, with David De Gea, they can sign him at any point and he could be available in Game Week 16 or 17 if Newcastle get things done very quickly. But I believe Newcastle will show some faith with Dubravka. He's a decent goalkeeper and he hasn't really done anything wrong when he has played. So I think he will be the main goalkeeper, and the plan will be to sell Turner to Dubravka whilst keeping Areola. So I've got that insurance policy. Even if Dubravka, the the Dubravka dream is short-lived. So at the moment, my plan is to make a transfer in goal. I'm not really expecting a clean sheet against Everton away, but I think long-term the fixtures are fantastic. And in home games, I would back Newcastle to keep clean sheets more often than not. This could be the last time I'm going to field Joachim Andersen in my FPL team. I could even sell him as early as Game Week 16, but the plan is to start him in Game Week 15 against Bournemouth at home. Despite the Cherries being in good form, they're scoring plenty of goals, home and away, and Palace haven't been too great recently. They're still missing Eze. There is a reported boost. He could be back sooner than expected, but I'm still fearing the worst of Crystal Palace overall. They're entering some really difficult fixtures from Game Week 16 onwards, so I think it's very simple with Crystal Palace assets, especially defenders. You keep them for Bournemouth and then you look to sell them as soon as possible. My second defender is Tsimikas, but as I mentioned earlier, I would not be surprised if he was benched. And while Tsimikas gets most returns in home matches, it is Sheffield United away next, and Heckenbottom has been sacked. He's the first Premier League manager this season to have been fired, but I still would expect Liverpool to absolutely demolish Sheffield United. It could be a tie game than some people expect. Of course it could be, but Liverpool should win the match and they have a great chance of keeping a clean sheet. So Tsimikas will be my starting 11 and I've always got Lascelles ready to come on. My final defender in my backline is Saliba away to Luton. So some very good fixtures overall for my defensive line, but most of them are away with the exception of Joachim Andersen. And even if Lascelles comes off the bench, that's another away fixture of course, but it's a nice variety. And the alternative is to go for Raya instead of Dubravka and go for a double up in Arsenal defensively. They've got the best away record defensively, and also they're very tough to beat and score goals against, and that's why they've got the best defensive record so far this season. So I am still considering Raya and Saliba, but looking ahead to Game Week 18 and possibly navigating that without the free hit, I think I'd rather go for Dubravka over David Raya because Arsenal are away to Liverpool in Game Week 18 and that could be extremely tough, and I've already got a triple up in Liverpool and a double up in Arsenal, so there's a lot to consider of course with that. But my current plan is to buy Dubravka. I don't think I'll go for David Raya at this moment in time, and if it wasn't for that injury to Nick Pope, it would have been a different story entirely and I would have gone for the Spaniard. My midfield speaks for itself this week. Mbeumo is away to Brighton. It's not the easiest of games, but you would back attackers to do well against the Seagulls. Mbeumo's on penalties, and he also has great underlying numbers. He's been very impressive this season, but he can frustrate. He misses some big chances, and he sometimes will underdeliver to a massive extent. A bit like Darwin Núñez, but Mbeumo has been more consistent so far this season. My second midfielder is Jarrod Bowen in that fierce London derby against Tottenham. I would expect more from Bowen in the coming weeks, and I desperately need it because that decision to sell Watkins instead of Bowen could be catastrophic, and it's already, resulted in some massive swings against me. But my third midfielder is going to be a very simple one. Mohamed Salah away to Sheffield United. He is an amazing captaincy option. And the only player I can see rivaling him this week for the captaincy is Erling Haaland, but he's away to Aston Villa, who have a great home record, and they've won every single game so far this season at Villa Park. So I think Salah is probably the best bet for the captaincy. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Next up is Anthony Gordon. He is a doubt to play against Everton, but he's currently in my setup, and I would back him to start, and I'd be very surprised if he was left out of the squad entirely. For me, he will either start or be on the bench, but he's a long-term hold regardless of the circumstances. My final midfielder is a very simple one in Bukayo Saka. I think Luton will be tougher than people expect. I still think Arsenal will win, but it might be by a tighter margin, a 1 or 2-0 perhaps. So I'm not really expecting Arsenal to go ballistic and win by 3 or 4, as maybe many people do. So as a result, I'm not going to go for Saka over Salah for the captaincy, and maybe Saka over Haaland is a debate, but not over Mohamed Salah in Game Week 15. As things stand, I am going to retain Darwin Núñez, but if I see any news or confirmation that Darwin will be benched, and I doubt we will get this news before the deadline, but if we got that confirmation, I would sell Darwin Núñez to Ollie Watkins, stomach my pride, swallow my medicine, and just go straight into it and keep Watkins until the end of the season. Darwin is a frustrating FPL asset. I kept saying this last season. He has been better this time round. He has shown improvement, but he's still very raw. He misses chances, and he really should have gotten a double-digit return against Fulham. But this is a fantastic opportunity. Even off the bench playing 30 or 45 minutes, Darwin Núñez could wreak absolute havoc on that Sheffield United defence, and going for that triple up in Liverpool could pay dividends. Right now, it looks like Trent, Salah, and still Darwin Núñez will be the best triple up you can go for, but Tsimikas also offers better value for money compared to Trent, and I still think beyond the next 2 game weeks, Trent isn't really worth it, and Darwin was always going to be a short-term punt, but I already regret it, and unless Darwin Núñez gets a brace against Sheffield United, I think it's just definitely a bad transfer and one of the worst I've made all season. My final player is going to be Erling Haaland, of course, and Aston Villa away is going to be very tough, but the way they play could suit Man City. I would expect the citizens to score. I'd be very surprised if Villa kept a clean sheet, so Haaland is always going to be in with a chance of scoring, but his ceiling might be a bit lower compared to a Salah, who could easily score 2 or 3 goals this week. With Haaland, it might just be the odd goal. That's enough. I don't think I'll captain him this week, but you never know. Things change very quickly in football. In terms of my bench, it would be Areola, Lascelles, Archer and Matty Cash in that order, and the only thing I really need to discuss is going to be the captaincy, and I pretty much spoiled it already. For me, it's Mohamed Salah, and Haaland will be my vice. I'm also considering Saka for the vice captaincy, or even Darwin Núñez, but I think that's very risky, and I'm going to stick with Salah or Haaland, and Salah for me with that fixture. I can't ignore it. It could be, of course, Liverpool away from home, not as good as they are at Anfield, and also the new manager bounce that Sheffield United could get on Wednesday. Either way, though, I'm going to go for Salah as my captain, and I don't think I'll deviate from that. And really, what could change from now until the deadline is my final transfer. Instead of buying Dubravka for Turner, I could go for Watkins in for Darwin Núñez. I could also buy a defender for Matty Cash, who that could be, maybe Zinchenko, for example. And in the midfield, I'm quite happy with this setup, but maybe with a -4 hit or by making some transfers, I could bring Heung-min Son in for Jarrod Bowen, to name another example. And of course, Cole Palmer is still on my radar. He's going to be back in the Chelsea team very soon. He picked up a knock the other day in training, and that's why he didn't start against Brighton. But I think my starting 11 speaks for itself with this setup. I don't want to start Areola no matter what against Tottenham, because I think Spurs will score 2 or 3 goals in that game minimum, whilst Dubravka will probably concede 1 goal, maybe get a clean sheet. That is possible, and that obviously would be a massive boost, especially if I make the transfer this week and don't start Lascelles and he ends up being on my bench. In this segment, I'm going to talk about Drafthound. There is a link in the description below. You can become a pro pay-tier member using my link, and you're going to get access to many great tools, such as the optimization tool, which also sorts out your team naturally in terms of bench order, who you should captain, and also transfer suggestions, as you can see on the left-hand side. Anderson to Zinchenko is the first one. Suggestion number 2 is Tsimikas to Zinchenko and Areola to Kelleher. And the number 3 one is Saliba to Zinchenko. I'm not completely on board with it, but there are some interesting ideas there as usual. Anderson to Zinchenko is a great long-term move. I just don't really like that sort of transfer this week necessarily. There's also the assistant manager tool here, and also player rankings, chance of scoring, assisting, all of that stuff which I've covered already in other videos. Even expected minutes, ownership, chance of a yellow card, anything you can really name. There's also the fixture analysis, where you can sort it out by defensive numbers or attacking numbers, player comparison tools to help you with your transfers, and also with who you should start. And the final one is predicted lineups, which are updated regularly. So check out Drafthound. And also here is my YouTube channel, where I put out polls. If you subscribe to the channel, you will see my polls come up on your feed. I'd highly recommend it. And one of the ones I put today is, do you think Darwin Núñez will start in Game Week 15? And 61% of you have said yes. I hope that's the case if I end up keeping him. I also did another one here in terms of my transfer plans, and 55% of you are saying Turner to Dubravka is the best move. In second place is Cash to Zinchenko. In third is Darwin to Watkins. And the last one is Turner to Raya, which was my original plan in Game Week 13 and 14, but it is what it is. And the final poll I put out heading into Game Week 15 is this about the best goalkeeper to buy. I provided the update on Nick Pope, which Eddie Howe talked about, and 64% of you are going for Dubravka as your next goalkeeper, 20% for Raya, 10% for Sanchez, and only 6% for Kelleher. So those are all the polls. Be sure to check them out, vote, like them as well, and also put your thoughts in the comment section of those polls on my YouTube videos and streams. It's all much appreciated. There's also links to the Discord server, Twitter and Instagram in the description down below. But let's now head over to fpl.team and talk about what my current transfer plans could look like in Game Week 16. By no means is this set in stone, but I could make a defender transfer such as Dalot or Kyle Walker in Game Week 16 and bolster my defensive line, because Going into that week, I've got Joachim Andersen facing Liverpool, Lascelles away to Tottenham, and Cash at home to Arsenal, and even Saliba away to Aston Villa. That's not looking too great. Tsimikas against Crystal Palace isn't too bad, but my defence will be very weak in Game Week 16 specifically, so that's where Walker or Dalot could come in. It's mainly for a 1 week punt, but Walker has great long-term fixtures, and I think Man City will start to keep more clean sheets, but my team could be Areola in goal, Tsimikas, Saliba, and Kyle Walker as the back three, a midfield five of Salah, Saka, Gordon, Bowen, and Mbeumo, and then Haaland and Darwin up front. The bench will be Dubravka, Lascelles, Archer, and Cash. And if we go to Game Week 17, I would buy Watkins back for Darwin Nunez, and that would be a very simple transfer indeed. And then in Game Week 18, this is how my team could look like, by also buying Cole Palmer and having Archer and Areola on the bench, and benching the likes of Walker and Haaland, selling Mbeumo to Palmer, by the way, and that's where things could really change. I am contemplating such a move. I like Mbeumo even up until Game Week 21, but with this blank in Game Week 18, if I don't use the free hit, it makes perfect sense to sell him and just go directly to a Cole Palmer or another midfielder who catches my eye. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's get this video to over 200 likes, so there's going to be a deadline stream tomorrow and much more content for FPL and UCL Fantasy. And also be sure to subscribe so we get ever closer towards 22,000 subscribers and beyond. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, and the FPL League. Drafthound is also in there. I'd highly encourage you to check it out in this Christmas period. It's going to be vital. I wish you all the best of luck for Game Week 15 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.